Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me on this Wednesday. We are remote today for All Access AM. We appreciate you guys jumping in with us on Twitter, on YouTube, wherever you are on this Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. We're here Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 Eastern, live, chatting with you in the comments section as well. And we've got a great guest for you today. Later on, we'll be joined by James Fletcher of On3, bracketologist, college basketball analyst. He'll be joining us to talk about the ACC. We'll talk about Duke. We'll talk about an incredible game, Clemson-BYU last night. Obviously, bad result for Clemson, not pulling that one out. But we'll talk some ACC hoops. But really, what we're going to lead off with is the story that has really dominated the last few days across the college football landscape, and that's Notre Dame and maybe a little bit of animosity, maybe a little bit of war going on between the Irish and the ACC. It is a major storyline to watch for the ACC. We'll see how it impacts the agreement that they have with the league. We'll see how it impacts, obviously, the relationship. Pete Bavacqua, the Notre Dame athletic director, talking about how there was really irreparable harm and damage and all of those things done as the league handled the Miami versus Notre Dame conversation around the college football playoff and positioning Miami to be in the college football playoff when chatting with the public, when expressing the support for the Hurricanes to make it to the college football playoff. Obviously, everybody will point to the ACC network airing that win for Miami over Notre Dame over a dozen times leading up to the College Football Playoff Committee's final decision, and that stood out. That, of course, ended up being maybe a part of why the committee did what they did in putting Miami in that 10 spot to then face Texas A&M in the College Football Playoff. We've got a lot of basketball to get to with James Fletcher. He'll join us around 7:20 or so. Excited to have him on. Excited for all of you guys who helped us reach 200 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. It has been so much fun growing this channel. We have a long way to go. Maybe 250 should have been the goal, that milestone, and then we could say, well, on to 500. Well, we're going to celebrate every 100 until we hit 1,000, and then from there, the sky is really the limit on this show. So thank you guys for hitting that subscribe button to the All Access AM YouTube channel. If you're watching us, hit subscribe to All Access AM or Google the All Access AM YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys. We'll also talk a little bit of coaching changes. We ended up not getting to some of that earlier this week on the Monday show, but Virginia Tech is building out its staff. We have seen maybe some shifting here, FSU making a hire as well. So we've got a lot to get to on the show. But I do want to tell you guys that we are presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions can help you and your business take care of all the things that you need to that really kind of bother most people. All of the maintenance around your fence, all of the parking lot striping that needs to be done. OPW Solutions can help you manage all of that. They're a full service commercial services company. When it comes to power washing, when it comes to snow and ice control, now that it's starting to cool down this time of year, whether it be your landscaping or, again, fence repair, Christmas lights, parking lot services, reach out to them today. They can get all of that handled for you. If you're in the North Texas area, if you're in Oklahoma, if you're in Arkansas, and even beyond, they're starting to expand their services. Give them a call, 214-444-3305, or email them info@opwsolutions.com. opwsolutions.com is where you can find more information on all the things they can do for you and your business. We appreciate them for sponsoring the Wednesday show of All Access AM. Let's jump into this ACC Notre Dame feud that is going on. And Pete Bavacqua, speaking, I believe, in Las Vegas earlier this week on Tuesday, really kind of went in on some of this. And maybe he wasn't in Las Vegas, but there was a press conference called. I just know this time of year, most administrators are over there for some of the award shows and meetings and things like that. But when you look at this issue that has come up, and Pete Bavacqua, made no bones about it. It is something that I think is a situation where he's standing up for Notre Dame. He's saying we're not going to be put in this situation by a league that we have an agreement with to be campaigned against. And whether you could make the argument that the ACC wasn't campaigning against Notre Dame or whether the ACC was just campaigning for Miami, Pete Bavacqua is going to stand up for his university. That's what he's paid to do. Just like Jim Phillips, kind of sent a very nice, hey, appreciate your stance. We really wanted Miami to be in kind of non poke the bear statement back, but Pete Bavacqua kind of backed off a little bit of the irreparable harm and things like that really was thrown out there right away. Here's what he said. He said, we have the ultimate respect for our fellow universities in the ACC. Wonderful universities with wonderful athletic programs. So it's not about the universities. It's not about Miami. He mentioned that Dan Radakovich and him have texted back and forth, and they're great friends about it. We were really surprised by, disappointed by, was how the ACC conference went on a social media campaign, in my opinion, attacking our football program. So he continues to stand up for his team. It is a I think, kind of flawed argument from the get-go, because the ACC has to stick up for Miami. They have to share their opinions on that and recognize the great season Miami had with hopes that they get into the college football playoff. It worked. At the same time, it came at the expense of Notre Dame, but I don't think anybody in this world, once in particular Alabama lost, would have said, oh, well, Notre Dame is going to get completely left out. Like, that was not something that really was pushed very hard. There were some bracketologists and things like that, saying, okay, maybe we're hearing the Miami buzz is real. Maybe we're going to see this finally get right. And it did, but you also have the fact that Alabama lost in the SEC championship. And it would have been on a kind of flipped on its head from where SMU was last year about the ACC championship. But really, with the way Notre Dame had played over the final 10 weeks of the season, I had a tough time seeing this jump really happen until some of the bracketologists really just kind of started putting it together. But the feud between the ACC and Notre Dame is really important because they've got to get a lot of things figured out here. They have to find a way to obviously smooth the waters here with Notre Dame. And it doesn't mean giving Notre Dame more. It doesn't mean giving Notre Dame a better seat at the table. It doesn't mean that you have to bend over backwards to give Notre Dame something they want. Notre Dame, if they're in the top 12 of the college football playoff rankings next year, is automatically in. From what has been reported about their memorandum of understanding between the college football playoff and Notre Dame to sign off on the expansion, is that in 2026 we'd see Notre Dame be factored in if they're in the top 12. So all of this could be for nothing, but when you look at the feud, there is still something there where Jim Phillips is going to have to go into overdrive here and just smooth the waters out. And I think as people get farther away from this, it is going to be something that kind of dies down and calms down a little bit just from a public-facing perspective. But let's not kid ourselves that Notre Dame canceling and holding hostage the league on Sunday over its bowl games is also something that should have been done. Notre Dame is not perfect in this situation either with their response. Their response to cancel their bowl game and opt out really is silly. I've said it's soft. I think it's soft. It doesn't make any sense because even if you think your team's beaten up, your team doesn't want to go, blah, 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 it's still an opportunity for these players to get a per diem check. It's an opportunity for these players to get more experience if you're a younger player, and to do it in Orlando. That would be a blast, right? So Notre Dame sitting there on Sunday, hemming and hawing over their future for the bowl game is something that really, I think, sticks in my craw if you're an ACC person watching that play out. Because, as most people saw on Sunday, you're seeing the ACC wait and wait and wait for all of these bowl games to be decided because of Notre Dame. And so you even saw some spots that that the ACC has affiliations with get filled by teams without an ACC logo on their chest. So it's a really, really particular set of circumstances that obviously I think we all hope that Notre Dame and an ACC team get in next time, just as far as kind of campaigning a little bit for the conference. But you don't have, I think, this world where Notre Dame is a victim here. They're a victim of a bad system with the college football playoff and how the committee decides things. But the ACC was just doing what it had to do for one of its full-fledged members in football. And things are bad when Brett Yormark, speaking with reporters in Las Vegas, called it egregious the way the Notre Dame athletic department and Pete Bevacqua has handled things. And that's when I found out, oh my goodness, this is a incredible situation where Brett Yormark, and of course, all the realignment burner accounts and all of these things start firing up right away. But Brett Yormark called it totally out of bounds that he was going after the ACC and Commissioner Jim Phillips. He said, I think his behavior has been egregious. He is totally out of bounds in his approach. And if he was in the room, I'd tell him the same thing. You have to accept it. We all sign up for it. And Ian, this is coming from a guy that understands, quote, was I happy about BYU? No. But I think overall they did the right job. Listen, it's progress over perfection. So Brett Yormark locking arms, so to speak, with Jim Phillips over the ACC's handling of this and obviously the whole college football playoff committee. He's even given them credit. So you have a really interesting world between these two massive entities that might have to get in a room and figure this out and how do you address the wrongs that have been done on both sides, right? Because Notre Dame can't be opting out of bowl games. They're too big of a brand. They had a good season. They are down. They're upset. They're all of these things. But bowl games and this whole setup that we're in right now can't be viewed as anything more than a good time for the players. You can't, as a fan, sit there and say, oh my gosh, like, why isn't the team playing this way and that way? It should just be totally fun. That you should never go to a bowl game that's in kind of a meh situation to go to. They should all be in these tropical destinations or good weather and unique situations that are well run by bowl organizers. And it should be a good time. And that's really what it's all about. And quite frankly, more so getting the younger players and the players that now that these bowl games don't count against eligibility, these players that need playing time and opportunity to compete and get better and all of these things, those are the things that we really need to see these teams embrace as far as playing a bunch of people. And we need to see the media embrace it, because we see the bowl records, the win-loss perspective being shown over the course of the bowl season. The media has to take some ownership here and just ignore it. I mean, really, we're at the point where last year, what was it, Cam Ward was suiting up, going in for the Pop-Tarts Bowl or whatever because he was sitting out as the number 1 overall pick. This is a flawed system. It needs to be viewed as a postseason all-star game. And when we see that come together in a better world, we're going to have better answers for this bowl system where it's not going to have this major trickle-down thing like we saw with Notre Dame. So it's a really unique situation that Notre Dame is in, but they handled it poorly. The ACC did what they had to do for Miami. It's not surprising to anyone that the ACC handled it the way they did. And quite frankly, we never saw even a statement from a Jim Phillips, campaigning that hard for Miami. It was just more in the actions from social media and things like that. So it is a flawed system, but Notre Dame, they've got to pick themselves up and figure it out. It's a weird world out there with the college football playoff and how they handle it. But you know, if you were trying to, count the win-loss record in this one, when Brett Yormark sticks up for the ACC, you could tell things are certainly not in Notre Dame's corner as far as how they handled it. So we'll see how it goes. They're on to their offseason, and the ACC is on to the college football playoff with Miami getting in, and now their bowl games being set. But the chaos on Sunday between Miami, Notre Dame, and the ACC pouring into this week, and made for some great cinema over the course of the week. So there is a lot more to unpack on that in the days and weeks to follow, I'm sure, as the ACC will probably be in contact with Notre Dame trying to figure things out. So we appreciate you guys for listening. We are going to be joined in just a moment by our friend James Fletcher, On3 bracketologist, but do want to remind you that we are presented by the La La Land Foundation. And look, while you might not have heard about much kindness between Notre Dame and the ACC, the La La Land Foundation is predicated on kindness and being an extension of the La La Land Kind Cafe. Find your La La Land Kind Cafe that's closest to you and walk in there and realize what they're all about. They are really active in supporting young adults who are transitioning into full-blown adulthood from the foster care system or backgrounds that aren't advantageous, and people that are trying to assimilate into mainstream adulthood. And there are so many ways to get involved and help with that. You can support monetarily, you can support with in-kind donations, you could support with your time and mentorship, and there's all sorts of ways that the La La Land Foundation is trying to expand and broaden their scope of how to spread kindness. And that's what it's all about. So go to lalalandfoundation.com and learn more about how you can help the La La Land Foundation out and get involved and make it a 2026 change for you and your family to get involved and start helping others. So we appreciate the La La Land Foundation for their support of All Access AM. Now happy to be joined by On3 bracketologist James Fletcher. James, thanks so much for the time. Good to see you again this Wednesday morning. What a thriller, Clemson BYU Tuesday night. It did not go Clemson's way, of course. BYU with a stunning late game heroics. Let's get into that game as a leadoff, and then we'll get back maybe a little bit towards Duke over the weekend and how they performed. But what were your takeaways from that loss for Clemson?
On the Clemson side, I think that first half kind of proved they can compete with anyone. That 21-0 run at the end of the first half was something that was just kind of head scratching in a good way if you're Clemson. They have some real firepower out there on the court, some guys who can really get buckets and then string together stops as well. Now, obviously, in the second half, they went cold, and that's when it becomes difficult. You got to kind of grind things out, try to find new ways to just push it down to the wire. And they were able to do that too. They got behind and they mounted a late comeback that did tie the game. Of course, BYU draws up a beautiful play to finish the game and the shot goes in. But if not for that, we would have had overtime. And I really don't know which way it would have been leaning at that point. Yes, A.J. DeBonsa was red hot and making all kinds of contributions across the floor. But Clemson had the last few points. They had kind of gotten things steadied on the ship. So really interesting result there. Yes, it goes down as a loss on the record column, but I think it's a good sign for the way they're trending into ACC play.
And that 67-64 loss, just a thriller in a great atmosphere too. Madison Square Garden, really fun to kind of see that type of a game with that high level of a player over there, and A.J. DeBonsa being that kind of future #1 pick type in the Jimmy V Classic. So it is a really tough loss to deal with, but they'll pick themselves back up. Duke continues to show why they're one of the best teams in the country. They're a national title contender. They beat Michigan State 66-60 over the weekend. Michigan State also in the top 10. That win with Cam Boozer, who earned ACC Player of the Week nominations and won it again, surprise, surprise, continues to be a just incredible, off to an incredible start this year as well.
Yeah, the development of Cam Boozer is going to be the big storyline for Duke this season. He came in as the star player. We know the John Shire mold of team that he kind of builds around. Get that star player in there and then surround him with guys who fit what he wants to do. Boozer is a guy who can facilitate from the top of the key. We've seen that throughout the season, and it's been really encouraging these last couple of games to see him add the efficiency to his game, the ability to create a little bit more for himself. That's what he's got to keep working on to be in that number one pick conversation with DeBonso, who we just talked about, with Darren Peterson at Kansas. If he wants to reach up and get that high into the draft class, he's clearly in the top 3 right now. But to take that extra leap up, I think that he's got to create for himself more and more throughout this season efficiently. He's starting to do that against Power 5 or Power 4 competition. And so if he can do that, they're real scary. And I think maybe the scariest thing about this team right now is that Dame Sarr and Nicholas Kamania are still figuring things out. So at that small forward position, they haven't hit their full stride yet. If those guys get going, they could really be dangerous.
And you also look at the ACC as a league that saw Louisville obviously take that loss in the ACC SEC Challenge to Arkansas, but bounce back with a really nice win over Indiana as well. They're trending in the right way. With that 87-78 win over the Hoosiers, and they've got Memphis up next, so that'll be kind of a fun one. Penny Hardaway and that Memphis Tigers team that isn't in the top 25, but obviously a name matchup. They do play Tennessee as well later on in non-conference. Louisville, this incredible schedule that they've kind of put together gives them another opportunity here to prove themselves, and they do with that win over Indiana. And what did you see from that game and just how they were able to bounce back in a big way?
Yeah, I think that they're a team that when they are clicking, they can really get going. They've still got some efficiency things to work through in that backcourt. I think it's still an adjustment period. Isaac McNeely, a guy who's been on the ball a lot during his career. Ryan Conwell has been on the ball quite a bit during his time in college basketball. Mikal Brown, the 5-star freshman. Obviously, you got to get the ball in his hands. He's one of the top point guards in the draft class. So there's a lot of guys who are in need of touches. You've also got the added kind of oddity to that lineup that Sanandra Frew is coming from the European game over. We've seen a couple of times him just get a little bit confused, a little bit mixed up on the rules between college and the European game. So as they continue to gel together, as they continue to play more in the system together, I think that they're going to keep getting better and better. We're starting to see that. Really like the mentality to take that loss that you spoke about and bounce back against Indiana. Really left no doubt against an Indiana team that is no slouch. There were maybe questions about them after that loss, but last night Indiana came back, played another game, yes, against Penn State, but a conference game in the Big Ten, and they dominated. They won by the huge margin. So I think there's no doubt that Louisville is one of the best teams and can compete with anyone as long as they have things figured out in that rotation. Real quick, though, I do want to touch on that Memphis game. The renewal of a historic rivalry for both programs. Really seeing the social media interaction from both sides of those fan bases over the last week has been great to see that rivalry come back. I believe it's a 6-year deal for them to play. So something that fans of both sides are going to have to look forward to here for the next few years. And that's what we love in college basketball. So glad to see that one back on the schedule. Even if it's not a top 25 game this year, going to be really fun for both fan bases to renew that hatred that they have for each other.
Yeah, and what better person to be on the other sideline for that than Penny Hardaway? He is just kind of he's really, despite not obviously I think achieving what Memphis basketball wants him to, he is still one of those coaches that is now kind of settled in well, and again, we'll kind of see what happens with his future and things like that, but it's kind of that perfect villain for this type of a game and a matchup for Louisville fans, of course, to go after. Give Louisville fans a little bit of a preview on Memphis. What has been kind of their holding them back a little bit this year and really from kind of reaching their potential under Penny Hardaway at times?
Well, the lack of continuity for one thing. I mean, Penny Hardaway has just the one thing that he has not been able to figure out so far is retaining a roster. He has to overhaul it each season. This is not a team that has PJ Haggerty and Dane Danger. If they did, they would likely be a top 25 team right now. The way that things have gone, they're relying on a new guy every night, kind of. They've got a lot of height on that team, but it's a lot of unproven bigs. There is Aaron Bradshaw, probably the biggest name that people will know from that front court, but he got benched just 2 games ago for lack of effort, really. Something that's been an issue for him, plagued him at Kentucky and Ohio State before this. It's kind of why he's at an AAC program at this point in his career instead of in the NBA at this point, given his physical tools. But he did respond really well after that, looked really good in their last outing. So if he's starting to trend the right direction, it makes this Memphis team way more dangerous than they previously were. Doug McDaniel, a guy that if you watch the Big 12 last year, the Big 10 before that, you're familiar with his game. So Zachary Davis from the SEC last year at South Carolina, that team was not particularly good, but he was a bright spot for them. They've got a good collection of talent, but it's still a collection of talent. Penny Hardaway still figuring out the starting lineup, still figuring out the guys he can rely on to go out there and give consistent effort. But that said, like I said about Bradshaw coming back in that last game and looking better, they just knocked off a Baylor team that is pretty good. So it'll be interesting to see, did they get it clicking at the right time here as they head into December and need to string together these non-conference wins for their resume?
Speaking of clicking at the right time, SMU and what they've been able to do in late game situations against Mississippi State and now Texas A&M to get those wins, huge kind of moments for this team to not be sitting here going into this LSU game Saturday night at 0-3 in their SEC games. They're 2-1 overall between those among those 3 games, and despite being kind of run out of the gym at Vandy, that was a nice response. Boopy Miller, Jaron Pierre, 35 points, no assists. So just absolutely comical stuff there, but it shows and speaks to his talent level too, and what he can do on the floor when he's on. This SMU team is kind of intriguing, starting to receive some votes in the coaches poll, getting some love from some of the media. But they do have another test against LSU Saturday night. But that win over Texas A&M was a big one for them to put that together and then pull away in overtime.
Yeah, I think the A&M game was really big for them because buckyball is not something that a lot of teams are used to seeing. And, it's a new thing to adjust to, a new strategy to try to figure out, to try to counter, especially early in this season. There's a very limited sample of what that looks like, that kind of hockey sub style and in and out and very quick up and down the floor at the SEC level with those type of athletes that he was able to go get in the transfer portal. So really impressed by SMU so far. Their lone loss is to Vanderbilt, which is a loss that looks better and better by the day. I believe, I know they were the other day. I haven't checked in a couple of days here, but Vanderbilt was at one point earlier this week the favorite to win the SEC now. So that's a loss that I think is going to look very good on your resume. By the time we get to Selection Sunday, don't think it will hurt SMU at all to have that there. You talk about these other matchups against SEC teams, though, those will always help you. Anytime that you can pick up a win against another Power 4 conference team, especially the Texas A&Ms who could be in that bubble conversation with you. Mississippi State obviously having a down year to this point, but we'll see what they can do in conference play. I think it's been really impressive for SMU so far, and this LSU game going to be another real marker test for both sides, who are, I believe, 1 loss each at this point in the season, and hoping to be on the right side of that bubble conversation once we get to March.
When you look at NC State, getting an opportunity to face Kansas this weekend, top 25 Kansas team, they've kind of hit some hard times here. They've lost to Texas, they've lost to Auburn. They're in that first year of the Will Wade era. They kind of started off hot with a little bit of excitement around them, but they do really have an opportunity here again to take on this Kansas team in a couple of a few days. They play Wednesday night they do have Liberty, but that Kansas matchup is one where they could probably really get back on the right track if they can get that win, don't you think?
Definitely. Yeah, this is an NC State team that we've talked about a few teams so far. It's kind of the way of college basketball. You're going to have these teams that overhauled the roster, still figuring it out into mid-December, still figuring out the pecking order of that roster, who defers to who when they're out on the court together. It's something that takes time to develop when you're playing 5-on-5 basketball with a new group of people, especially when it's a new group of people who most of them come from a spot where they were that go-to guy. They were the one who everyone gave them the ball and got out of the way. So I think that this NC State team will continue to get better and better. I think if you're Will Wade, you're probably behind closed doors kicking yourself, thinking, why couldn't we have played Kansas about a week earlier, knowing that Darren Peterson is back out there and looking a little bit more healthy. But you still have a big shot, and there's no reason seeing these two teams play. I don't think that they're in completely different classes or anything like that. So a big opportunity for NC State to get things in this non-conference resume, at least, headed in the right direction.
Have there been any surprises to you when you look at the ACC so far and just really kind of dialing into what we're seeing from some of these teams? Cal's sitting there at 9-1 doing some good things, and I think that's a positive trend for them, and Virginia is now in the top 25 as well. But overall, any surprises for you?
I think just how fun the ACC has really been so far. There's a lot of teams that I watch here on a nightly basis, and I think, man, this is a good game. I'm just going to keep this one on of the screens here. I'll get to that next game here in a little bit. Virginia, right up there at the top of them. Those European European recruits that they brought in, they add a lot to that team. You've got Jakari White, Sam Lewis. There's just a lot to like about that Virginia team, and they're stringing together results. They're in the top 25 now, headed in the right direction. Virginia Tech has Nicholas Avdalas, who is really fun to watch if you haven't gotten a chance to see him yet. Toby Lawal is another guy who's been there for a while, who is electric at that forward position. Miami has a lot of pieces that, watch out. Jay Lucas, we know he can recruit, and this team's looking better and better already. So a lot to really like on top of the teams that we've already spoken about here today. North Carolina as well. You can't rule out they've been better than expected. And so a lot to like in this ACC conference, and a lot to keep track of week in, week out, night after night.
Not one team under 500 overall so far this season in the ACC. Really interesting stuff there in that regard. And of course, you can stack your non-conference schedule however you want and kind of build it up. But for me, Jai Lucas and what Miami's been able to do has been really fun to kind of see. They've had their moments. They've gotten their just kind of early signature win in his tenure in a sense. But that win against Ole Miss on the road I thought was important. And he's kind of fighting the battle. They've had a good schedule. They've faced Florida. They've faced BYU. But Miami is just a team for me that I'm really watching closely to see if they, as the season goes on with a lot of these new pieces, can figure it out and maybe make some noise in league play.
Yeah, I'm really interested in them as well. They continue to kind of trend towards the bubble, get closer and closer to that conversation in terms of bracketology talk, which of course means that they're more important for me to continue to watch and see what they look like. I saw them live earlier this season when they played Florida. And I think that in that game, they got worked over a little bit, but it also felt like they kept competing. There wasn't this quit in them that a lot of teams would have had in that situation. And so to see them go out there and continue to improve. Malik Renault, we know what he can do as a scorer. Ernest Uday on the defensive end, we know what he can provide. I think it's really about finding the right balance of guys and getting Shelton Henderson to the best form he can get into in his freshman season.
When you look at it in North Carolina and the resurgence that they've had, it's all been built on defense. Their ability to rebound the basketball. Of course, having Caleb Wilson helps. And they're doing all of this without Seth Trimble too.
Yeah, really impressed by them. I think that Kyan Evans was one of the most underrated additions in the transfer portal. He is a guy who can shoot efficiently, handle the ball at that guard position. The forwards have gotten a lot of love for this North Carolina team, but the guards have stepped up in big moments. We've seen it on a couple of different occasions where, yes, the forwards, Caleb Wilson, Henry Visar, those are the guys who have kind of anchored things and kept them in it throughout the game. But these guards, they've got a little bit of punch to them at the end of games in big situations. And so they really seem to have gotten something figured out here. The defensive identity, Caleb Wilson has taken a leap as a prospect, and that obviously helps them in a major way. Visar was another one of these guys, really underrated, I think, in what he was going to bring to this team. So really impressed by North Carolina. I think they've really started to string things together, and now it's just about continuing results, continuing down the path that they're going. I think that they're in really good position right now.
Do you have an updated feel for who wins the ACC? I think now, seeing what we've seen, throughout non-conference play so far, do you think Louisville can kind of get back up to where they were, or do you think this is Duke's conference to lose at least, a few weeks away from starting ACC play?
It feels like it's Duke's to lose right now, but that doesn't mean that they can't suffer setbacks. And if you're Louisville and you look at the schedule, for example, there, I think that you kind of lean on, well, North Carolina is really good. And usually that rivalry gets split when both teams are really good. So if we can count on that, that means that we've got to hope that we can knock them off. Well, that puts them at 2 losses. That now means that we have everything in our hands. And there's one time that you're allowed to slip up through conference play per time that Duke slips up in conference play, if you can get to that situation. So it's definitely not out of the realm for them, for North Carolina, to get hot and continue to improve. But Duke does feel like the best team in this conference. They feel like one of the best 2 or 3 teams in college basketball so far this season. So I think that they have to be the early favorites coming into things, but that doesn't mean that things can't change quickly there, particularly on a team that has so much gravity around Cam Boozer.
And I think, watching Duke and what they've been able to do, with Cam Boozer, and he's just, he's on a tear to be, the player of the year in the ACC, at least early on. I think watching him and his maturity has just been, sometimes it's just a wow factor with some of these guys and how quickly they're able to assimilate into these lineups and into these rosters, despite being, so talented and all the expectations in the world. For them to do it, it still says a lot about them, and I think that's just huge for Duke to obviously get that, and they continue to bring in elite talent. Do you see any of these ACC teams that are underachieving, entering that piece of league play that you think could start to maybe figure it out and turn it on a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm still kind of struggling with Georgia Tech as I look at them. They're really fun in the front court. You look at the Baye Ndongo and Mohamed Sila combination, and then they bring in Marshall off the bench too. They are really fun down there. They get a lot of rebounds. They block a lot of shots. It just doesn't feel like they have enough in the backcourt to support it in these big games. They've struggled kind of through, and 6-4 right now, but it's felt like they've played small teams too close. It feels like they've kind of let go of the rope a couple of times against bigger competition. It just hasn't come together yet. We'll see if it can, because there's no shortage of talent across the roster. I just don't know if it's spread at the right positions to bring things together. Another one, Florida State at 5-4. Look, it's year 1 under Luke Locks, and he's got a point guard, Robert McCray. So if you've got that position solidified, a really solid guy who could be in all ACC conversations if they can get things kind of into the middle of the pack, I'm interested to see what the rest of the roster can respond with and if they can string together some better results.
James Fletcher, we appreciate all the time on this Wednesday morning on All Access AM. Great stuff, man, and we appreciate all you do for us at On3, covering NCAA basketball and getting the bracketology all figured out for us.
Yep, thanks for having me on.
All right, there he goes, James Fletcher, joining us on All Access AM. We appreciate his time, as always, on All Access AM. And we appreciate you guys. Please hit the subscribe button to our channel, All Access AM, on YouTube. We are live Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central, 8 to 9 Eastern Time. And we need you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, All Access AM. Just Google it and hit that subscribe button. We'll always, now that we're into the full-blown college basketball season, always try to bring guys like James Fletcher, Jamie Shaw on to the show, and we appreciate their time breaking things down. Jamie Shaw did release his latest look at the ACC Player of the Year, just kind of how he feels things are going to play out. This is a look at that updated ACC Player of the Year perspective that Jamie Shaw has for us. Cam Boozer obviously leading the way, just an unbelievable freshman who's been able to do some big-time things. And then you have Caleb Wilson right there as well at North Carolina. Again, just what he's been able to do and step up, in particular while Seth Tremble's been hurt, has been super important for UNC. He's averaging over 19 points, 10 rebounds, a double-double a game, just incredible stuff. Juke Harris is another one at Wake Forest, has been able to take a huge jump from year one to year two, over 20 points a game for him. Malik Reneau, you heard James Fletcher mention him, also averaging over 20 points a game. Ryan Conwell at Louisville, just a shade below that 20-point mark. Henry Visar, 16 points, 9.2 rebounds, almost a double-double, 63.6% from the field over there, the big man for North Carolina. Darion Williams came into North Carolina State with a ton of expectations, and he continues to kind of live up to those for the Wolfpack. Abuko Okori for Stanford, 21 points as well from the backcourt for the Cardinal. Boobie Miller, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 6.8 assists. Just stellar stuff from him and how much he's been able to produce and help this SMU basketball team. And then Amani Hansberry at Virginia Tech, 16 points, 8 rebounds on his resume so far this year. A really intriguing race, pretty much behind Cam Boozer, if we're being honest with ourselves, watching that play out for the ACC. And the Player of the Year conversation in the league is only just beginning, and Cam Boozer could very well end up being right there for the National Player of the Year as well, with the way he's stepped up too. So before we kind of close out with some coaching carousel conversation around the ACC, do you want to remind you guys about Doyle Glass, the Amazon and Barnes & Noble best-selling author, who is the perfect avenue to get your favorite uncle, your dad, your grandfather a Christmas gift. The holiday is really coming up. 15 days till Christmas. What's the best way to get your shopping done? Well, you can fly around the Amazon app. You can go to Barnes & Noble. You can do your shopping in person if you'd like to. But Doyle Glass, his 2 books, Lines of Medina and Swift Sword, incredible opportunities for you to get your Christmas gift knocked out so easily. DoyleGlass.com is where you can find direct links to purchase these books. Really firsthand accounts on the Vietnam War and the stories of the heroes that just are often too forgotten in this world. The Vietnam War, and Doyle Glass does a terrific job bringing them back to the forefront and sharing their stories and talking with them and getting their firsthand accounts. So the links are also in our YouTube description, as well as our podcast episode description. So make sure you check those out and get that Christmas gift for your favorite history buff today with our friend Doyle Glass. Again, best-selling author. We appreciate him for the support as well, but also just providing just great, 2 great looks at the Vietnam War, and he also has a World War II book coming out in 2026. So excited to share that with you as we get closer to that. We look at James Franklin and what he's doing at the offensive coordinator position, and Virginia Tech is really zeroing in on that right now as he's already got his defensive coordinator hire, Brent Pry, and I've got some thoughts on that. But you also have the offensive coordinator hire coming into focus. Per our own Pete Nakos, the Hokies do have an offensive coordinator group that they're focusing on. John David Baker did end up getting hired by Ole Miss as the offensive coordinator for Pete Golding, and he is coming over from East Carolina for that job. But Ty Howell has emerged as the target in the Virginia Tech offensive coordinator search, as they are continuing to build out their staff as well. And this comes as Danny O'Brien is going to get hired as the quarterbacks coach at Virginia Tech, coming over from Penn State. Danny O'Brien hoping to deliver some Davy O'Brien award winners in Blacksburg for Virginia Tech. And you're seeing a lot of this, Penn State to Virginia Tech group kind of come into focus here for James Franklin, and just kind of what he's looking to build in that regard is pretty straightforward. It is a coaching staff that has seen a lot of success and has seen a lot of different coaches come through and go on to be head coaches like a Brent Pry coming through, and now being the defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech is just an incredible situation that, again, I'm going to touch on in just a moment. But when you look at Ty Howell and what he brings to the table, Penn State, they were able to, at times build up, Drew Aller into this great quarterback, this pro prospect, and it's a shame he got hurt, but also, that Penn State offense just at times was just too, I just think too vanilla. Obviously it fit right into the Big Ten in a sense, but now in the ACC, I'm interested to see how Ty Howell will be brought in as the offensive coordinator, and kind of inching closer to that hire being made. It's been reported by some places as well that it is coming together. So we'll see when the official kind of confirmation comes on that. I haven't seen it yet, at least as of this morning, and maybe I missed it. So if there are any Virginia Tech fans in there, you can shoot me down or whatever. But Ty Howell is somebody that has been the focus as the offensive coordinator for Virginia Tech. Among the names that they also consider Joe Moorhead, the head coach at Akron. That would have been a big name. I'm a huge Joe Moorhead guy, and just what he's able to do and kind of the culture that he brings to the table would have been a nice piece there for Virginia Tech. But Ty Howell, helped develop Tyler Warren, that All-American tight end at Penn State. Just an incredible player. Watching him play in the college football playoff and do all the different things that he did over the course of his Penn State career. Ty Howell getting the tap on the shoulder is a really intriguing move by James Franklin. Again, he did look at some different candidates. He did look at some different options for Virginia Tech, but appears to be settling in on Ty Howell as the offensive coordinator. And you pair him with Danny O'Brien, who's supposed to come over from Penn State. It makes a ton of sense. He was able to play quarterback for James Franklin, so he knows what he wants in a system. He obviously coached with him at Penn State as well. And then you bring Sean Clifford as well into the NFL. That says a lot just as far as the development and putting together a plan for these quarterbacks to be successful and put themselves in the right position to be successful in this offense has just really stood out when you look at Danny O'Brien and what he's done throughout his career. So there is a lot that is still being finalized for James Franklin and his staff. But I think the biggest piece to the puzzle that we all saw come together is Brent Pry. Brent Pry is back at Virginia Tech as defensive coordinator. It's really quite astounding in a sense, and I would love to know if this has been done in the past by anyone. When you have a head coach who gets fired, gets completely let go, and now the incoming head coach, with the ties that he has to Brent Pry, says, no, I still trust him. I want him on my staff. That is such a fascinating move to make for James Franklin. And it just shows the level of respect that he has for Brent Pry. And he spoke about that, and he got emotional about it in his introductory press conference, talking about Brent Pry and what he has meant to Virginia Tech. And so For James Franklin to go ahead and make that his defensive coordinator hire, it really is a fascinating move that a lot of people probably wouldn't have expected going into this tenure for James Franklin, just because as a coach you want to go in there and you want to set your own levels of expectations. You want to go in there and set your own way of doing things, and I think as James Franklin got to get around Brent Pry even more and learn a lot about this job, he could tell that it was a situation that would be okay and would be fine for the coaching staff to deal with and to work through, because of the trust that these two guys have built in each other, and again just through their time coaching with each other and being on the same staff, and James Franklin having him as defense coordinator at Penn State, really just stands out. And for Brent Pry, I mean, he's got the credentials. He was a Broyles Award nominee and just had a Penn State defense that was one of the best in scoring defense and red zone efficiency and all of those different things. And the ties for James Franklin to Brent Pry just couldn't be overcome if you're a Virginia Tech fan looking for a full-blown parting of ways from that previous coaching staff, because James Franklin, Brent Pry's dad was his offensive coordinator in college, so they've known each other for 30 years. There's just such a trust level for these two, and as James Franklin settles into Blacksburg and navigating the scene, this is a hire that takes a lot of guts to make, and you can tell that it is really solely built out of the respect that James Franklin has for Brent Pry. So he's had strong defenses at Virginia Tech in the past, and despite it not working out as a head coach, you can see that he has the talent, as far as coaching acumen, to make Virginia Tech be one of the top defenses nationally. And maybe it is just some guys don't always work out as head coaches, and they need to find a different path to take to put themselves in the right position to be successful as a coordinator. And man, the trend towards, if you're an offensive-minded coach in particular, or a defensive-minded coach in particular, having somebody who's the head coach of their side of the ball, that is exactly what is happening here. And it makes so much sense for James Franklin and Brent Pry to be the ones that reunite and do it this way. If you really think about the relationship and you really think about what they've been through together and how much success they've had together, it's really intriguing to watch that play out. And again, it takes a lot for James Franklin to do that. So kudos to him. His staff is still coming together. They've made some other hires as well, but those are the two that really important as they are coming together to getting closer and closer to that transfer portal window, which starts January 2nd as well. So this is a coaching carousel that continues to make kind of waves, obviously, with some of the coaches having to coach their teams in the college football playoff, like a Bob Chesney and a John Summerall coaching Tulane and James Madison as well. But you also are kind of having some quiet, in a sense, assistant moves really start to be played out in this coaching carousel ahead of the transfer portal window, which I think is intriguing, because you'll have these coaching staffs, and this is another reason why the bowl games, quote unquote, shouldn't matter. They should just be a reward for these players and a fun time and all these things. But you're seeing some coaches make moves already to different universities, and guess what? These coaching staffs, they've got to backfill. They've got to figure out how to fill a role if somebody leaves and do all those things. That Penn State staff and how they're going to finish out the season will be something to keep an eye on, because they're facing Clemson in the Pinstripe Bowl. Well, a lot of those Penn State coaches are headed to Virginia Tech with James Franklin, and there's a lot of staffers that are on the move to Blacksburg or are already in Blacksburg. So it's quite the time to figure a lot of that out. But Nick Williams is getting hired by Florida State. He is the next defensive line coach or defensive ends coach for the Seminoles, coming over from Syracuse. And this comes as Syracuse is they demoted Elijah Robinson from defense coordinator to co-defensive coordinator and defensive line coach. Nick Williams now leaves for Florida State, and a bunch of other changes in the mix for Fran Brown and that coaching staff as he overhauls it following the season that they had, which, right or wrong, the way it was going on offense was awesome. They just did not have a quarterback behind Steve Angeli that could really get it done. And so that impacted the team as a whole. But when you look at Florida State making this hire, somebody who can recruit the position, somebody who can continue to develop the position, and has been able to get some NFL talent on his resume as well. And I think watching the continued evolution of this Florida State staff is something that really, really is intriguing as a whole, as they continue to try to get over the hump and get to that next level for Mike Norvell, who is coming back in 2026. But that 5-7 record obviously sits and looms large heading into the offseason as they look to build back up that program. So Nick Williams is somebody who is really, I think, watching his career. I've kind of kept a close eye on it in a sense, just from watching him kind of make moves around the country, but a well-respected recruiter that I think with the resources at Florida State will be able to help bring in talent and put them in position to revamp that defense and kind of tweak it and continue to kind of elevate it back to what we know Florida State defense is usually at as far as the level goes and what they strive to be. So a nice hire there. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to change everything and Florida State's going to go to the playoff because they brought in somebody like Nick Williams, but you want to assemble the best pieces you possibly can, and that's what FSU is trying to do under Mike Norvell, is just put different pieces together so that they can build back up to where they want to be. So quite the time there when it comes to Florida State and what we've all watched unfold over the last year and a half, 2 full seasons now, 2 full regular seasons, and they have their work cut out for themselves. So that is really it on the coaching carousel side of things and what they are doing as far as some of these staff changes, but we'll continue to monitor that on All Access AM. We'll be back for our Thursday show, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll talk more college football playoff predictions. We'll talk ACC predictions, and we'll give our bowl game predictions on the Thursday show. So excited for that and excited for you guys to be back with us. Do me a favor, please. Hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel. And if you're watching right now on Twitter, on your computer, guess what? There's a little QR code that just popped up in the top right corner of your screen, or maybe it's the top left corner of your screen. But for me, it's on the right. The QR code brings you directly to our YouTube channel, and you can scan that QR code and subscribe to the YouTube channel immediately. That's what we need from you guys. It helped us get to 200 subscribers. Now we're on to 500, the push for 500. Let's get it done, everyone, and we appreciate all your support for this channel. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We talk ACC football, basketball, recruiting, and more, and really looking forward to continuing to build this with you guys over the holiday season and bowl season and college football playoff season, and of course into 2026 and beyond. So really appreciate all of our sponsors as well. OPW Solutions leading the way on our Wednesday show, as well as the La La Land Foundation and Doyle Glass, best-selling author. So we appreciate all of them for their support. We hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll catch you guys on Thursday, bright and early, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time on All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody.